Today we're going to say cheers with Cranberry Sparkle. This is a new embossing powder from Wow and Catherine Pooler Designs, and I've paired it with a couple of the Wow embossing powder changes to add a little bit more interest and variation in one embossing powder for this card. It's Verity here at my YouTube channel and blog Pretty Little Button, where I make paper crafting tutorials for the everyday crafter. So as I say, this is the Cranberry Sparkle embossing powder, which would pair really great with the Cranberry Fizz Catherine Pooler ink, but I'm going to use it standalone and I'm going to combine it with a couple of the Wow Changes embossing powders. So I've got a couple of spare pots and I'm just using a metal spatula to add the powder into the spare pots, and I'm using about 1 to 2 spatulas of the Cranberry Sparkle embossing powder. And I'm going to pair this with 2 of the Wow embossing powder changes, and the 2 changes I'm going to use are sheen and texture. Now I'm not using glisten because this embossing powder has sparkle in it, hence its name. It's got some glitter in there. So I'm just going to add sheen and texture just to give a bit of a variation on the front of my card. So once I've got enough of the Cranberry Sparkle in my pots, I'm then going to start adding my Wow changes. So this is a sheen changer. Now this is going to add a lovely pearlescent sheen to the powder, as well as having that glisten sparkle from the embossing glitter. Again, I'm trying to do a 1-to-1 ratio, so I'm putting about 2 spatulas of the sheen into the pot as well. As I mentioned, the second changer I'm going to be using is texture, and this obviously by its name adds texture to your embossing powder. I find that it adds sort of a bit more of a matte look to the powder as well, and it's very tactile and great for creating more dimensional embossing. And once I've got all my powders in there, I'm then just going to give them a good shake to mix up the powders to get an even consistency. Okay, to create the embossing powder die cuts, I need to first of all make some heat embossing cardstock. So I'm using my Wow Clear Ultra Slow Drying embossing pad, and I'm smushing this down onto some white cardstock just to transfer the ink. And then I'm going to cover this with Cranberry Sparkle embossing glitter without any of the changes in there. So I want this as is, really. And this has a lovely ruby burgundy red colour with fine glitter mixed in. Because of the glitter particles, it's always better really to heat from behind or beneath the cardstock. This ensures that you're melting the embossing powder and you're melting it from the opposite side, so you aren't going to blow any of the glitter away. And as the embossing powder melts, it traps the glitter. And then you can always bring your heat gun to the front just to finish it off. Most of the glitter will be trapped within the melted heat embossing. I'm not going to show you how I did the card panels for the other 2 because it's pretty simple as before, just smushing your ink pad down. But this one I have covered with the Cranberry Sparkle mixed with sheen changes. And this gives you a beautiful sheen to the embossing powder. It lightens the colour as well, so you can see side by side you've got the pure Cranberry Sparkle at the bottom, and at the top it's much more of a lighter colour but has a much more pearlescent shine. And then this one is where I added the Cranberry Sparkle with texture, and this, as I say, adds a bit more of a matte finish to the powder look, and it really gives a lovely tactile feel to it. So once all the panels were created, I'm then using my Hero Arts Nesting Circle dies to cut out a selection of small circles. So I'd used all the small circles in the set, the smallest 5, and then die cut out with all 3 panels till I had a huge selection of circles. Then I'm just positioning them on a slimline card. So this is a UK size slimline card, but you can use whatever size slimline card you have. And I'm starting off with the largest circles towards the left hand side of the card, and then integrating the smaller circles as I move up the card, mixing the sizes just to give it a bit more of a realistic look. So I was looking for as though these were bubbles floating up my card panel. Originally I started doing it on a horizontal landscape, and then I changed my mind. Once I put it all on, I was going to make a vertical shaped card, so that's why at the moment it's horizontal. Once I was quite happy with the position, I'm then just using some 3D foam pads to adhere to the back of these circles and add them to the front of the card panel. Now, I'm overhanging some of the circles just to give it a much more realistic look, so it's not like it was just a pattern created for this card. And any of that overhang, I then use my guillotine trimmer to just trim off and align it with the edge of the card panel. That creates a really nice crisp edge, makes it look nice and finished. And then I'm just using some of the really small circles and adding those to the front. Now I had to cut my foam pads down for this. I have to admit, it was fiddly. It's not something I do that often, and you don't have to do if you don't want to. You could have used different size circles so you weren't going down quite as small as I did. However, I do like the fact that there are those little bubbles at the top just to finish off the top of the card. So I just want to show you some of the stamping I did for the 2 little champagne glasses. And what I did was I used the Good Stuff Inside stamp and die set from Catherine Puller Designs, which has a die to die cut 2 champagne glasses out, and then a champagne glass to stamp onto them. Now I find it easier to die cut first your little champagne glasses, put it back into your cardstock to create like a slot for the die to sit in, then align your champagne glass and stamp it. So initially I've stamped this in Hot Tub Catherine Puller ink, and then what I'm doing is I'm using a second colour to add some shading. So I'm just going to zoom in here so you can see that. So I've initially stamped in Hot Tub, then I'm going in with Daydream ink, so it's a darker teal colour, tapping that down, and then I'm using a wet baby wipe or wet cloth just to dab off the edge to smooth it so it's not such a harsh line. I'm doing this several times, and as the ink settles in the card it does smooth out. So I foam mounted those onto the front of the card, and I also added a Cheers sentiment from My Favourite Things. I heat embossed this with several layers of metallic gold rich pale embossing powder and added it to the front. And then lastly I also added a sentiment from Catherine Puller's Kudos to You, saying not surprised to hear that news. And I thought this was just kind of a nice fun cheers, well done kind of card. If you enjoyed today's video, why not give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also press that bell icon to be notified when the next video is up. Let me know what you think of Cranberry Sparkle embossing powder, and have you used the Wow changes in your cards as well. For 10% discount at the Wow embossing powder shop, just use the code you can see on screen. Until next time, happy crafting!